Hello everybody, my name is Grace and today I'm going to finish the book Who Was Milton Bradley? Chapter 8, The Education Department. In 1889, Milton decided that the family needed more room. The Bradleys moved to a larger house. Nellie's parents moved in with them as well. The new house was perfect for parties. There were sliding doors between rooms that could push aside to make even bigger rooms. The crowd at Bradley's house was almost always ended up playing parlor games. Milton was an enthusiastic game player. He loved joking with his guests and seeing them have fun. Milton always encouraged people to bring ideas for new games and test them out at his house. If he liked a game, he paid the person who had contributed the idea, and Milton Bradley Company manufactured it. One game that came out of Bradley's parlor was Carry On, a game where players raised pieces around the board to see who could get back to the beginning first. Another was Happy Days in Old New England, a game where players landed on spaces marked with old-fashioned New England activities, like sledding and making maple sugar candy. During the 1800s, the Milton Bradley Company made toys as well as board games. He introduced a toy Buffalo Bill gun, named after the popular traveling show Buffalo Bill's Wild West. The gun was so popular that the stores sold out of them so fast as the factory could make them. Jigsaw puzzles were also big sellers. Many puzzles showed maps, famous places, or pretty scenes. But Milton had a different idea. He wanted to create a puzzle with some action. He drew a picture of a train wreck, and the factory made it into a puzzle called Smash Up Locomotive. Kids loved it, and it became the company's best-selling puzzle up to that time. Milton followed it with a blown-up steamer, a picture puzzle of an exploding fire engine. Milton knew what kids liked. The company added new buildings in 1887 and 1891. It now had separate departments for education, games, and publishing. Milton spent most of his time with the education department. His father died in 1890, and Milton knew how important education had been to him. It was important to Milton as well. Milton always wanted to keep his employees happy. He sometimes threw company parties, where everyone gathered together at tables set up in one of the factories and ate dinner together. And it was not uncommon for the workers to play with games and toys. After all, someone had to test them out. Milton went to the factory every day. He worked in the morning and took a nap every afternoon. But he couldn't sleep if there was too much noise in the factory, so machines were turned off during his nap time. By the end of the 19th century, the Milton Bradley Company made desks, chairs, tables, chalkboards, paper, paints, and educational toys and games, almost everything a school needed. His business managers had wanted Milton to stop spending so much time on education department because it wasn't as successful as game divisions of the company. But those days were now in the past. Educational products were now every bit as profitable as everything else. The Milton Bradley Company produced. Milton had been right all along. Quality supplies for teachers were good for business. Chapter 9, Going Home. In 1896, Milton built a vacation home on Casco Bay in Maine, the state where he had been born. He named the cottage Shore Arches. He and Nellie spent as much time where they could. Milton liked to sail and go for long walks. He started painting with watercolors, and of course, he and Nellie had guests over almost every night. Their party usually ended with a round of games. Milton was not a wealthy man, but he never cared that much about money. He, Nellie, and the girls had enough to live comfortably, and that was all Milton had really ever wanted. He didn't buy a big mansion or fancy clothes or take expensive trips to Europe. He liked riding around Springfield with Nellie. It was the new automobiles, but that was his only luxury. In many ways, he was very much like Milton, who grew up in Maine. He believed that working hard, going to church, and staying close to your family. He believed that learning was important. He also thought that fun was important. He knew that both of those things could be combined. Milton retired from the Milton Bradley Company in 1907. George Tabley took over all the departments and ran the entire company. Milton and Nellie divided their time between Massachusetts and Maine. Florence married a young man who went to work for the Milton Bradley Company. Lillian married a chemistry teacher. Milton was happy to be a grandfather to his 3 grandchildren. Milton died on May 30, 1911, after a short illness. He was 75 years old. The company managed to stay in business through the hard times of the Great Depression, and its manufacturing of fighter airplanes parts during World War II helped it grow. After the war, Americans had money and time for games. Once again had money for time and games. The Milton Bradley Company created many new games that became popular in the 1950s and 60s, like Battleship, Candyland, and Twister. In 1960, they created the 100th anniversary version of the checkered game of life, simply the game of life. The Milton Bradley Company began to make electronic games and video games in the 1970s and 80s. In 1984, the company was bought by Hasbro, a large game and toy maker. Hasbro also bought Parker Brothers, one of Milton Bradley's biggest rivals. Hasbro still makes Milton Bradley educational activities, toys, and games. Back in 1910s, the employees of Milton Bradley Company had given Milton a book they had made especially for him. It was called Milton Bradley, a Successful Man. It told the story of the first 50 years of Milton Bradley Company. So that's all of chapter 8 and chapter 9, and I will see you on the book review. Bye!